This video was produced by the UCD Maths Support Centre in conjunction with the UCD Access Centre. So before we talk about the unit circle and how we go about solving trigonometric expressions and equations, we need to talk a little bit first about how we determine what quadrant an angle terminates in. So the first thing to keep in mind here is that whenever we talk about a positive angle, we mean an anti-clockwise rotation. So if you have your xy axis and you're talking about measuring an angle theta, you will be measuring theta counterclockwise from 0 degrees. So you're measuring in a counterclockwise rotation. So a larger angle, theta, could be again measured anti-clockwise, and that would be this large angle here, theta. And then if we measure a negative angle, we need to measure clockwise. So if you measure some angle minus theta, you're measuring clockwise from 0. So now we'll just look at a couple, some examples here about how we measure these angles and figure out which quadrant they terminate in. So you'll remember your quadrants, this being the first, second, third, and fourth quadrants. So we're asked here, in what quadrant do each of these angles terminate? 960 degrees, minus 60 degrees, and 740 degrees. So the first thing we want to do is get them in between 0 and 360 degrees, because if this is 0 degrees and 180 degrees, if we go around, we'll end up back at 360 degrees where we started. So we like to have our angles in between 0 and 360. So if we look at this first one, 960 degrees, if we subtract 360, we'll have 600 degrees, still not in between 0 and 360, so we'll subtract 360 again, and we end up with 240 degrees, which we can easily say is in the third quadrant by simply just drawing it. If we draw our angle of 240 degrees, an angle of 240 degrees terminates in the third quadrant between 180 degrees and 270 degrees. Next, when we look at minus 60 degrees, we just have to remember our rule from up here, that if we measure negative angles counterclockwise. So by simply drawing the angle negative 60 degrees, as we have here, we realize that negative 60 degrees is immediately in the fourth quadrant. Similar to the first problem, we're going to have to subtract 360 degrees from 740 degrees, which gives us 380 degrees. Again, it's still not in our 0 to 360 degrees like we want, so we'll subtract 360 degrees again, and end up with the answer 20 degrees, which we can easily say is in the first quadrant. Again, by drawing an angle of 20 degrees, we see it's immediately between 0 degrees and 90 degrees, so in the first quadrant.